Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer. Welcome back to F1 Manager 23. This is episode 38. Into the final two races of the season before our long-term effort to reshape the car, preparing for major regulation changes for next season. As we enter a new era, I have done nothing but research from that day forward. That should give us a real leg up on the competition. But in the meantime, we've got to get through two last races of this season where we're now out of contention for points. Struggling to finish well, but we have had another driver development update. It's only 1st of November, so we still also have December and January and February before we get into races. For Sargent, we got a +2 to control, +1 to defending. For Flourish, +1 to braking. So again, she was in the 40s not long ago, already a 53 now. Control up to a 75. This was just overcoming the 70 barrier just a couple of months back, and she's already to a 75 and overtaking for the first time, I think, in the entirety of her development path has increased, and it's +2 to a 59. That's a pretty solid haul as she adds 4 points to her ability. She's definitely been getting more lately than what she had previously.
Welcome to the Silver State of Nevada for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. The track here is a high-speed street circuit that takes in the lights and the sights of this spectacular Sin City. Drivers will take on over a mile of the Las Vegas Strip, racing flat out past all the glamour and glitz it has to offer. Formula One's highest speed street circuit promises incredible action up and down the Las Vegas Strip. Racing at night means track temperatures will be lower, so data from Free Practice 2 could be crucial to managing both qualifying and the Grand Prix. The city of Las Vegas is abuzz with excitement as our race draws ever closer. Yo Guan Yu will know exactly what's expected of him in this race.
They've done well to secure a P9 start, and they'll be keen to convert that into some points.
And the time has come. Let's go racing. The atmosphere is electric here for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. It's lights out and away we go.
And we are racing in Vegas. We just were a couple weeks ago, just about wrapping up the regular season. Made for some good racing, the cold temperatures. Thanks to a couple penalties, we move up a little bit. It's to P16, P17, but for this one, we're going to go with the one stopper for Sargent. We're going to mix it up with Flourish going for the two stopper. Flourish ultimate pace is paramount, and she's faster on the softs than she is on mediums or hards, so keeping her on the softs is going to ultimately make her a little bit quicker overall. Okay, that's 2 laps in the book, backing off.
So what DRS?
Yep, got it. Currently low on pack.
Copy.
Alright, if you haven't seen any recent episodes, then this will be news to you, but if you have, you know exactly where we're at and what we're up to. Right now, we are just biding our time to get to the new season and the new regulations, and we've been focusing entirely on research for next year's car and not this year's car. So as the season's gone on, we've gone from competitive and scoring points to, it's been a long time since we scored a point, and we've been very much fighting at the back of the grid. So here is Sargent in P14. Flourish, though, hanging on P17. She's definitely finding a little more pace than she had before. Part of that, though, is her being on the soft compound, making her a little bit faster, her being light. We only went light by 1 lap, though, because it's only a 50-lap race. So she's not much lighter than the other cars. Are the softs that much faster? Maybe. She's holding up some traffic. They are unable to get by her. Somehow overtakes are difficult here, when actually in real life they were pretty easy. But again, that was race conditions. Here it's 19 degrees Celsius. It's warm. Way warmer than what we had in real life.
Is open.
Flourish still not last. DeVries did eventually get around her, but it's good that really both drivers are hanging on. Has anyone pit yet? I don't think so. No. She's the only one on the softs. Holy cow. Nobody else is opting for that strategy. It's definitely given her more pace, though. I mean, she's not Not only is she not off the back, but she's not in last. She's stayed ahead of cars throughout that stint. And this is the one where she had to go a bit deeper. The last one, they'll be fresher. She's going to move to the mediums now. This will be her slowest stint. It will ultimately put her behind some cars, but you never know, right? We're on fresh mediums. Everybody else is on used mediums. It's going to give her a chance to maybe run faster, run ahead of the curve. And when they come out, they'll come out behind her. It's very possible. So that's Florsch down pit road. It's a good stop, 2.47. Not amazing, but definitely a good stop. And it should give her a chance, should give her a real chance at running ahead of some other cars, at least for a while. I mean, for now it's last place, but that clean air and pitting 3-4 laps ahead of everybody else could be the difference. And they're going to be on hards when they come out too. So how long can Florsch remain? Wow, whoa. They're on mediums and they're pitting 1 lap after her? Yikes. Early pit stops for a number of cars. What have they opted for? Onto the hards, but early. It's just 17 seconds back of those ahead. Magnussen, Bottas both into the pits. They come out ahead of her, though. She's 1.5 seconds down on Bottas. They must have pit already. Perez and Ocon are just behind me. But would they have? Sainz pit from the race lead, and he's back behind me. No, they have not pit. How are we ahead of the Mercedes? Sargent. He's having himself a good little race here. Heading off down a pit road. Giving up a P6 on track, but one of the last cars to pit. 2781. Very slow. No official mistake, but yikes. Come out right in front of and cut off Tsunoda. P13. Hard to get tires up to temperature and not seemingly having any issues with it. Fuel recovery is hardly happening here. De Vries has come out behind Florsch, so she's not last. There's 4 cars left to pit, 3 of them pit this lap. Verstappen, the final one, at the halfway point of the race already. Sargent up to P13, overtaking Perez. We're right back there with the Mercedes once again. They're off the pace today. And Verstappen finally pits, so everyone has pit once, and it looks like Florsch is the only car that's going to end up pitting twice. But for now, her strategy has paid off. She's ahead of a car. She's in the battle in the back of the grid. She was ahead of some others. I thought with her early pit stop that it would have bumped her up. It was a good stop too. Somehow it didn't. Somehow the others, the overcut worked better. But she's in a battle for 16th to 20th, at least for the time being, until she ends up pitting. She'll be faster for the last stint, but the time she loses with that pit stop will put her out of contention. Meanwhile, Sargent is P13, ahead of Perez, chasing down Tsunoda and Ocon, and in the mix. We'll have to lift and coast, though, at some point to get the fuel right. I would say both would, but Florsch with the pit stop will probably put herself into a lap down scenario, if only just. By the way, she's having a way better race than normal. But into that pit window. Florsch down pit road for the final pit stop of the year. Oh, not of the year. We still have another race. Oh, damn. My bad. 2.666. Very evil pit stop. It's going to bring her out 15 seconds behind De Vries, and unlikely to be able to chase. This is going to be more of a, hey, she's not losing time scenario than hey, she's gaining time. But we'll keep an eye on that. Maybe, just maybe, she will. Brand new softs over hards. I would imagine she could gain for a little bit. She is inside 15 now, but it's barely. She's barely gaining. Okay, as for the lap situation, we've got about 10 laps to go, and we are near the danger zone on fuel. And Florsch is not near the point of getting lapped. She's pretty comfortably still on the lead lap. So we're going to have to lift and coast to get the fuel right for both of these drivers. Doing so has recovered the fuel pretty quickly here. We only underfueled by a single lap though, so it's shocking just how bad the last two races fuel recovery has been. But we're nearly right now on lap 44, and we're actually getting closer to Ocon with the lift and coast, and staying ahead of Perez with the lift and coast. And Flores is closer to De Vries, now just 10 seconds behind. She's gained 5 seconds on the car ahead of her. And De Vries, there's not been a single incident all race. Not one touch of wheels, not one broken wing, not one run wide, not one lock up. Nothing. Flourish's pace advantage, though, is soon to run out as she's at 65%, but fuel's right. She's now down to 8 seconds, another 2 seconds closer to De Vries than before. Perez all over the back of Sargent, but unable to make an overtake. Sargent has gained about 1 second on Ocon, is all. 3 laps to go. But Flourish, lead lap, has been competitive all race, is gaining on the car ahead of her here on the final stint. The extra pit stop, of course, putting her back really just the one position, but she's recovered so much of what she lost with the extra pit stop, and being on the better compound has ultimately made her so much faster today. As we begin the final lap for Sargent, Flores has a lap and a half to go. And push for her final lap. See how much ground she can make up. Sargent push to try to stay ahead of Perez.
And Sainz crosses the line first. He's taken the win.
Sargent will cross the line in P13
Take the flag.
ahead of a Mercedes,
P13.
which is pretty impressive. Albon P8 though.
That was a
Good
solid
points
mistake.
for Alfa Romeo today.
Yeah, good job.
AlphaTauri scores a
Thank
point
you,
as
guys.
well today. In fact, 2 points. Shocking result there, but as we come down the strip, the final time here for Flores. Too little, too late on trying to chase down De Vries, but just 7 seconds behind on merit with 0 incidents all day from any drivers whatsoever. And for her to put in a competitive race throughout and gain 8 seconds on that final stint over her nearest rival, we'll take that. That's
What
pretty
a
impressive,
dreadful
especially
day it
with
ended up
the
being for the
the
Williams driver.
slug of a car we're trying to
Well, I
drive
think
right now.
most people-
With 1 race to go, Sargent 15 points ahead of Magnussen looks pretty safe. 8 points behind Piastri, but we're not going to score points, so P12 it is for Sargent. Meanwhile, Flores De Vries is the only other driver who has not scored a point this season. I don't think we're going to be anywhere near De Vries except for on track, because they're also really slow right now, but I don't think she's going to be suddenly scoring, well, even without points, but scoring a position above De Vries to move ahead of him in the standings. But as for the constructors, Alfa Romeo picked up 4 points. They closed the gap, but it's 18. They're not going to score 18 points in the last race, right? Probably not. Shouldn't. I doubt it. But they've continued to develop the car. It's going to hurt them next season. Haas on 7. AlphaTauri doubles their points total for the entire year, now on 4.
Season draws to a close here with the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. A long season has led us around the world over all this year's races to get here. The last chance to settle the season in the final round. The Yas Marina circuit was completed in 2009, and we've seen a fair share of celebration and commiseration over the years since then. The scenery may be spectacular, but this weekend, all eyes will be on the track. Only 58 laps stand between the drivers and the checkered flag here under the lights at the Yas Marina circuit. There's a chance for Esteban Ocon to show what he can do here.
It's a P2 start for them, an excellent opportunity, and no doubt they'll be looking to grab it with both hands.
But there's no more time left. We've got a race on our hands. Anything could happen. It's the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. It's lights out and away we go.
Last race of the season, and yet a lot of drivers have opted to take penalties and put in new components. Now, sometimes you just literally don't have a choice because you have a crash, but there was no incidents in the last race at all, so there was no obvious need from any drivers. We're gonna go for the one stopper today. Be patient. There's a number of cars that are clearly going for at minimum a two stopper, so we are going to see a mixed strategy today. Let's see if the one stopper works. Do we have enough pace to hang on? Oof, close call there as we nearly get into the back of Norris. Surprised to see Norris this far down the grid, but that's probably penalties. Haas, the only team that we seem to be competitive with, maybe Alfa Romeo, but having to get on the brakes to back off away from Norris has definitely hurt Sargent's pace here early on. 58 laps to wrap up the season. Let's fly through it. Still holding on to that P15 with Flourish down in P20. Sainz has already gotten around, or Sainz has dropped to the back of the grid. I don't think he started at the back, but maybe did. On the mediums, Flourish does not have the same pace as others, and that seems to always be the case. If we put her up, step her up in a two-stopper scenario, she tends to stay a bit closer, but when she's on the same or worse than others, then it really shows her lack of pace. Sargent down to P17. Are we recovering fuel? Have we made progress with that? I think we have. And first stops of the day, Sainz comes out right there with Flourish, overtakes her immediately. Number of cars pitting. Again, that two-stopper, that's going to change things up, right? There's going to be a number of other cars that are either going to have better pace or just have that extra stop, so we could benefit and come out ahead, or we could put ourselves in a scenario where we are very much playing a different game than them and wind up behind. So at this point it's really hard to say where we'll be, other than that Flourish clearly is destined for a P20 because she's already behind everyone by a fair margin. Sargent, meanwhile, though, competitive and goes up and down the grid order fairly often, getting overtaken pretty quickly here. So clearly showing less pace than cars around that are on the fresh compounds. Those fresh compounds are really helping out. Pit window's open, but both drivers are struggling to finish off the stint. So definitely off the pace right now. You just have to make it that little bit longer to make the one stopper work today. But we seem to be losing so much time here in these final laps that might not be beneficial to do what we're doing. Before we even hit pit road, Sargent has already fallen back down to 17th position. That's how slow we were in the final laps. Kind of negating everything we gained. 2.595 for the stop. The one stopper really not working here. The pace was awful those final few laps. Flourish. Again, she had no pace even to begin with, but it was that much worse at the end. 2.692. They're both done. No more pit stops all season. We had a single mistake, to my memory, to my knowledge, a single mistake all season long from our pit crew. Huge difference from a year ago. Not quite the fastest, but effective for sure. We managed them so much better this year than the previous. And you can see just how slow we are. Look how far behind everyone else we are. But these guys are all on the softs. They are going to pit again. There can't be too many cars trying to go the distance. In fact, Russell might be the only one. Ocon, Piastri, Stroll, feels like they pit a little too early, which means almost the entire field is going to have to pit an additional second stop. That may still play in our favor, but I doubt it. We are just so far behind from those final laps that feels like we're probably a little too far back to do anything other than maybe contend with the Haas and Alfa Romeos. But Sargent on hards while they're on softs, not losing ground. So at least there's that. He is not losing ground to those four cars. That he's gained a lot on Gio, and Gio finally pits. He was way off pace there at the end and ends up 15 seconds behind us. Zhou pits, but he's 10 seconds ahead. Pourchaire has already pit. So now we're kind of waiting on Bottas, De Vries, and Albon and what happens with them. But here comes that second round of pit stops. So far, yeah, not doing. Vitali is well ahead of us. Everyone else well ahead of us. Bottas, De Vries, Albon somehow have opened up a bigger gap than what they had. So them on the softs have been quick enough to gain on us on the hards. De Vries comes out just behind. Albon comes out just ahead. And Bottas is 5 seconds further up the road. So we might beat the Haas today and might not because they're on softs and they have a pace advantage. And De Vries overtakes and pulls away. Lap 45, we still haven't gotten the fuel right. We don't have a pace advantage. And it looks like P18 and P20. That's what we are heading for in the final race of the year. The one stopper failing us. Let's go ahead and conserve the fuel right. We don't need to save the components for another day. And actually, Florsch doesn't need to do anything. She's already a lap down, right? Yeah, she's already a lap down. Okay, we have a crash. Finally. 2 races. We've had nothing. Ocon going up the inside of the Alpine. The Alpine does not give him racing room there. He's sufficiently alongside. Former Alpine driver Ocon coming together. I'm not sure that's going to benefit us, though. Oh, Sargent got around De Vries. So we're back up to P17 and actually left him behind. No penalties. Racing incident. Florsch is a lap down, so we don't need to worry about her. Sargent is not a lap down. Verstappen is certainly coming, but with 10 laps to go, we might hold him off. So we just need to get this fuel right. One final time. De Vries overtakes. But we get the fuel just about right here, and we're going to be able to stay on De Vries' heels and hopefully get him in the overtake before the end. So P18, P20 for the final race of the season. Not beating a single team. Rough way to finish things up, but we did have the high confidence, so it's not a big concern. It just goes to show how much we focused on next year's car versus everybody else doing a mixture or heavily focusing on this year's car, and it could make for a significant advantage for us down the stretch. 1.3 seconds back. Let's go ahead and go full attack. Nothing to lose here. Destroying parts won't matter. Inside a second for a brief second, and then it goes back outside. There you go. Closing it down a little. DRS, the only chance we're going to have. Go ahead and go balanced for now. We can use the first DRS zone to close up on him and then try to attack on the second DRS zone.
Go in that, I think.
Half a second down. Alright, now pushing.
When you slide cover,
Copy that.
Okay, back to balanced. I didn't really want to overtake yet. I wanted to we get ahead. We are beating Haas today, maybe. But we're going to have to push down this straight. As he's got the DRS now to come right back, which is why I didn't want to get ahead yet. But no brake checking. No brake checking our opponent like Alonso.
Anyway.
Battery's empty. Spare fuel's used up. Sargent did not get that right. He overtook De Vries too early. And he came right back at him because he used up the spare fuel. So that's it. Florsch, by the way, did finish P20. Giovinazzi and Florsch were the only ones. Lap down to Florsch got lapped a second time right at the end. And Sargent undoes his hard work of hanging with De Vries. Softs versus hards. Beat up hards. Could have beat him. Didn't get it right. Final standings for the year. Verstappen with 515 points. 14 race wins, 20 podiums, just 1 DNF this year, 2 sprint wins, 15 pole positions, and 7 fastest laps. Leclerc finishes second with 4 race wins. Sainz in the other Red Bull gets 3 race wins and only finishes third. Russell in the second Ferrari, just a few points behind, very close for second, third, and fourth place. 2 race wins for him, 3 sprint wins. just 2 pole positions. Norris, best of the rest in the McLaren without a win this season, only 1 DNF, finishing 4 points ahead of Esteban Ocon. Mercedes struggling a little bit right at the end of the season, but they had a period of time here down the stretch after the regulation changes where they had gotten a lot stronger, really closed the gap, but the last couple of races hurt as they didn't score the points they needed to keep the momentum they had. Stroll takes 7th, Perez 8th. Perez had a great race. 4 podiums for him. No race wins for any of these guys. Gasly, 107 points in 9th. Pourchaire, 75. Piastri, 38. Sargent in 12th. Magnussen did score a massive haul of points on the final race. I mentioned that McLaren was looking stronger, and for whatever reason, Norris not scoring the points right down the stretch, but Magnussen looked good at the end of the season. Scored 10 points. That's a huge haul for him. Really, the last 2 races were most of his points on the season, but he still ends up 5 points behind Sargent. Gio on 7 points, Valtteri on 7, Albon 5, Zhou 3. Sonoda scores again right at the end of the season, 2 points. So AlphaTauri scored both of the last 2 races, and then just the 2 drivers without points this season. Final constructors tally, Red Bull comfortable in the end over Ferrari, even though they did not develop the car down the stretch. They were definitely focused on next year, so expect them to be at the top of the grid. Ferrari, though, sacrificed a lot this season, so did Mercedes, to keep their 2nd and 3rd positions, while Aston Martin takes 4th, McLaren 5th. They looked strong right at the end, so maybe that was a development thing, or just, I don't know, Norris was taking penalties there at the end, so that could be why he wasn't scoring. Alpine, 145 for them. We do keep 7th place, with Alfa Romeo, Haas, and AlphaTauri grabbing their 5th point, but not overtaking Haas. A little bit of a battle between those 3 right at the end of the season, with us and some of the other teams sitting out and focusing on next year's regulations. That's definitely good for us because, in all likelihood, Alfa Romeo, Haas, and AlphaTauri, who saw progression down the stretch, they'll be behind us to start the year. If we're lucky, we'll be ahead of some others as well. Entering December, so the final month of the year, of course, race season is behind us, but we're preparing for the upcoming year. Final pit crew training. Oh, it's brilliant. It looks so good. We're making such progress now that I understand the system and follow the system so much better than before. The overtraining wasn't working, but when you keep the numbers low, when you keep the fatigue low, the results are so much better. They are so much better. And so balancing it, you can see there's a lot of days off in the month of December, but spreading it out. Just I take a blank calendar, start from custom and build it, and just keep below 10% at all times and rest when needed to drop it back down. But train. Now, for the pit crew attributes, the jacks, we're going to gain a +1 over the month. Use tires off, wheel gun, all making small gains. Overall, so much better than where we were a year ago. We started this year with all of those in mid-50s, which means we gained 12 to 13 points over the course of the season. Car release has picked up about 6 or 7 points over the course of the season, but it's nearly maxed out according to our pit crew manager and her ability as an 86. But we lost about 6 points last year. We're gaining 16 this year, which means it's a +10 for the year. Now, that does mean we'll probably lose more than 6 this year. 7, 8, right? The losses are bigger. The higher you are, the harder you fall. But it's certainly not a bad number. Not a bad number at all. Like I said, I'm expecting just 7 or 8 points of losses this season, which should be pretty easy to recover with how things are going. Mistakes are fewer. As a result, we only made the 1 this year. We kept the fatigue low this year. That was all fantastic. The pit stop time was the one where I really couldn't make much gains, but here we are with a .06 this month. Now we're going to lose a lot of that with the turnover entering January, but I think our pit crew training has gone superbly this year with the manor. Now the one thing that's hurting is the car building, right? I'm at 43%. It's not great. It's a bad number, but it's going to lose less this year. It's going to be pretty easy to cover that off entering the new year. By the way, I finished the month with less than 10%, and yet here we are with 21%. So no matter what we do, it seems to always ticking over into a new month. Add fatigue, just organically. On the driver development, Sargent +1 to control and defending. For Flourish, +2 to control, +1 to overtaking, now a 60. Getting better and better. Fastest pit stop standings, we ended up on exactly 100 points. 8th overall, definitely better than where we were in the point standings with 30 in the constructors. We get 3.1 million for that. Flourish, of course, finishing on 0 points, but Sargent with all 30 of our points this season and 12th in the constructors, or in the drivers, that is. We were 7th in the constructors, so that was a good place for us. Our team rating is going up a fair bit from that. We finished the season target, but the long-term objective of 50 points, 50% point scoring races, we came up well short of. We scored points in just 7 races to get those 30 points overall. My rating as team principal went up from nothing to 100, so I suppose there's that. Our team rating was a little give and take. Our heritage rating went down for lack of long-term success, but our constructors rating went up because of the success this year. That brought the overall team rating up a fair bit, and the board confidence remains high at the end of the season, 1.5 million. So bring in an extra 4.5 million at the end of the season here. So here's the big changes for the coming year. Season prize share is changing. That starts next year, right? You would think. Midfield 7th, where we just finished, would be less in the prize share than it was. It's definitely catered more to the top teams now. But the major technical changes are coming. The chassis is a full 65% drop, by the way, and I didn't put that much into the chassis. Everything else is 55%, though. On the final day of the year, we now have 35 million in the bank. I actually did 2 facility upgrades, Weather Center and our the one right next to it on the list, the facility whatever tour center or something like that. New season target, Drivers' Championship 12th, so they want us to do at least what we did. New season target is 7th in the Constructors' Championship again, so for me, that's good. Long-term objective, score podiums in a quarter of the races by 2029. We've got some time to do that. We've got 4 years to do it. That's good. Similar setup to the previous seasons for our sponsor obligations will bring us 3.25 million per race with a preseason lump sum of just shy of 18 million. Putting all of the necessary responsibilities on Logan Sargent once again. Again, it shows our objective of 7th. Let's hope that remains the case. Our balance entering the new year is minus 6 million, but we had that extra funding right at the end of the year, so collectively puts us at 29 million, still in good shape. Okay, here we go. The technical changes, the car, we know it's different. How bad is it? How much are the losses? We've nowhere near recovered everything in the chassis. 13% is all we covered off of 50% losses, but we knew that one was higher at 65%. But that is a hugely, very costly loss in the chassis department. Front wing, I did a lot more to cover off the losses, but again, higher than expected. It's 51%, 48 to 51. We covered off 22% of that. So we covered nearly half of what was lost. Rear wing, we really did cover off, in fact, more than half of what was lost in the medium and low speed downforce on the rear wing. The airflow sensitivity is just about half. The drag reduction, DRS delta, a bit less than half on what was lost there. Side pod didn't get a major emphasis from me, but we did cover off 4/9 of what was lost. I mean, not quite half, but a decent amount of it covered off. It's going to be interesting to see just how bad other teams are, because we literally went all in on this, and I'd say across the board we've covered off maybe 40% of what was lost. Major technical changes for sure. The underfloor got the most attention, and we definitely got more than half of what was lost covered. I think we're looking at a wild start to the year, though. You can see teams in wildly different places, and week by week, with upgrades coming to cars, seeing drastic changes. Suspension, really low coverage. I never put the extra time into the suspension. It did get 4 upgrades, but they were all 4 minimal upgrades, and so huge loss to the suspension. That's going to take a bit to cover and get that back. We did get a bit of the downforce recovery. Cost cap remains the same, but that season prize share is going to be different. 7th place, minus $4 million in the coming season. So January 1st, we're sticking with the Mercedes engine for another year. Driver development, almost non-existent entering January, but overtaking +1 for Florsch. The internal car report. It's ugly. It's ugly. Our car is so much worse than a year ago. The thing is, everybody's is going to be like that. We've lost 3 kilometers an hour. 3 whole kilometers an hour in terms of top speed. Our acceleration is down by 100th, 1300ths. DRS effectiveness has dropped by 22%. Our low speed ability has taken a drastic hit, 0.2 nearly. Medium speed is 0.2 nearly. High speed is 0.2, over 0.2. Dirty air tolerance drops by 18%. Brake cooling drops by 20%. And engine cooling has dropped by 19%. Big time losses still to cover off. The pit crew losses, as expected, 8 points. I figured it was going to be that little bit more this year, so we do lose 8 points. 8 points, 8 points, 10 points in the car release, just 4 in the car setup, and 6 for their speed. Our speed is just a 57, now just a 51, which means we didn't lose a ton in terms of the speed, but that is way behind our other attributes. First thing that stands out to me, the research importance. The next underfloor upgrade. I'm now getting 3%, putting the same sort of time, same sort of effort into it as I did for the research. When I did it as research, I was getting 5%. Now as just a regular upgrade to start the year, it's significantly less. So that means the importance of the research was significantly higher, and we went all in on that research. It's entirely possible that there's going to be teams that are taking a much, much bigger hit than I anticipated. Training for the month of January, we're going to finish up the month at just 4% fatigue and already recover 5 points in the jacks, tires, wheel guns, car release. 4 points in the car, 4 points for the car release, 5 in all the others. Car building, same, but still gaining. It's positive. It's almost a +1 there. That's recovering a lot of what we lost. We lost 8 points and 10 points. We'll have recovered 5/8 in 4 of those categories. We'll have recovered 4/10 in the other. And we're still a -4 or about -3.5 in the car building. Meanwhile, focusing mostly on pit stop time, I've already got us to a 2.514, gaining 4 100s. Right, to start the season, we're into the final year of our contract with Diana Romano, who's our technical chief. We've got her renewed for an additional $600,000 yearly salary, 4 more years, immediate, so it'll be a 4-year contract for that one, so 3 additional years. Our staff is pretty okay, by the way. So Romano's in 83, Carter's in 81, Bernard's in 83 now, so they've all developed a fair bit. Romano's very young, just 34, 35 for Carter, And Bernard's a little bit older at 65, but still younger than quite a few out there. The only thing is the lack of race engineers to choose from, but now that we're into a new year, we will be seeing an evolution of the pool once again. Race engineers has hardly changed, but there was a few new ones last year, so we might see some additional new ones this year, potentially a female one finally, so we can get one of them hired. But theoretically, if that happens, it would be a huge drop in the quality of that race engineer. Team roster updates. We'll check all 3 levels because there's going to be one very important stat regarding this one. Verstappen and Sainz still at Red Bull, Leclerc and Russell still at Ferrari, Perez and Ocon at Mercedes, Stroll and Pourchaire at Aston Martin. Pourchaire's an 85 now, better than Sargent by a fair margin. In the McLaren, Magnussen and Norris. Seems like we've had no changes. For Alpine, there's definitely a change here. Gasly and Bottas. Of course, our lineup remains unchanged. For Alfa Romeo, Zhou's in 86 and Albon in 84. So Albon moves into the other seat, right? Did they just swap? Was he at Alpine? For Haas, Gio and De Vries, no change. For AlphaTauri, Tsunoda and Zane Maloney. There's the only new driver on the grid for the coming year. Formula 2 grid is going to include drivers that are worse than Flourish. For us, that's good to see that that is taking place now on the Formula 2 grid. She's starting to be competitive compared to a Formula 2 grid, but you can see for the most part, 70 plus or high 60s, and she's just not quite there. 64, 66, she could mix with that team. Enzo Fittipaldi at a 78 on the F2 grid. F3 grid, this is the important one. You can see how Flourish is better than all 6 of these drivers. So she is making progress. Progress is the right word for it. Better than all 6 of these drivers. As good or better than all of these drivers. Betty Falbush. Betty Falbush makes the grid. That's a new driver in the pool. She's a 52 overall. It's her first year in a seat. Tomo Tanaka makes a seat. And Suzanne Hoffman. So we have 3 females on the grid. Is Tanaka the one from last season? I'll have to see on that. That might be a second year now for Tanaka, which would make her eligible to sign next year. With that sort of rating, we'd want that to be as our reserve driver to help her get some experience. In the driver pool now, Pierre Gasly is the 5th driver at a 90 plus. Piastri is the driver who was left out. Jack Doohan is also available as a free agent. Hamilton and Alonso have both retired by this point. Confirmation that Tanaka is the one who was in an F3 seat last year, so she's got her 2nd straight year in F3, which means at the end of this season, she will become eligible. She'll have at least 2 seasons in F2 or F3, and she is 20 years of age, so she's at least 18, meaning she'll be eligible to hire at the end of the year. Also noteworthy here, the other driver, the additional female driver that was in the pool but never had a seat, is no longer in the pool. So she has taken an early retirement option, unable to get a seat. But the good news is there's 3 female drivers in F3 this year, one of them in her 2nd year. It's going to start giving us some options to bring into the team and make something happen. But long term, it's going to be tough because, yeah, we had Flourish way down here, and now she's moved up the grid a lot. I mean, Ida Cohen was way ahead of her. She's outdeveloped him. She's a 64 now, but we could see that she's better than all of the F3 drivers now, and she's better than a couple of the F2 drivers, but she's only better than a couple of F2 drivers. She's got a long ways to go to truly be competitive. It's going to take much higher than a 70 rating to do anything. It's going to take a really good car to make that happen. But this This is a wild year, and so much can happen. This is as far as we're going to get into this episode. We're going to finish our preseason in the next one. Development, of course, is on the way. We've got 46 days till Bahrain. That's going to do it for this episode. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.